scissors using Wix? Well, we did. Hi, I'm Stefan. I'm an R&D manager here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our last plenary session. It always seems like it goes so quick, but by the time we get to this point, I'm like, yeah, we need to finish up here. Cannot hear me. Let me plug my mic. I don't have excuse me, this isn't my mic. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, Jimmy doesn't. All right, I have 6 o'clock, so let me get rid of the waiting room. Actually, no, let me do this. Okay. Is everyone seeing the PowerPoint? Good. Oh, let me set this too. All right, so welcome everyone. Like I said, this is our final plenary session meeting, although we still have one more week, though, of the course. The course officially ends on March 8th, which is next Friday. And today we are going to be talking about intertextuality in K-pop music videos, which is really fun. If you hate K-pop, I'm sorry, but if you love K-pop or you're just kind of like, it's okay, hopefully you'll learn a new way to appreciate it. Okay, so some logistical things. Final exam. So remember, your final exam is going to open this coming Monday, which is March 4th. It will open at midnight, and you need to submit it by the very last day of the course, the listed last day, which is March 8th at 11:59 p.m. So next Friday. So it's the same schedule as what the midterm was. It is also the same format as the midterm. So there's going to be 6 questions. Each of them is going to be worth 10 points. It will have the point distribution in the question. And there will be 3 visual analysis and 3 short answer questions. And it's not a cumulative final. It's just the content after the midterm. So Korean art in museums, contemporary art, and K-pop, which is what we're talking, or intertextuality in K-pop, which is what we're talking about this week. There will be like a whole class, like the whole course kind of reflection for you that you'll have to answer. But otherwise, it's just content we've done recently. So you don't need to go all the way back or anything. So I think the number one reason that people lost points for the midterm was that we forgot to do your parenthetical citation to one of the course resources. So remember to do that this time. And the other thing is you cannot, so it says this specifically in the instructions, reciting the plenary session doesn't count for that. It needs to be one of the texts or one of the lecture videos that you're citing as part of your answer or in order to to boost your answer. Okay, so are there any questions about the final exam? Okay, yeah. If you did the midterm, this should be what you think. This should be what you should, the same thing. All right, thank you. So, next week, so next Tuesday on March 5th from noon to 1, we will have the extra credit museum session. So this is extra credit. You're not required to do this, but if you would like to, you can, if you do it, you will raise your grade by 1 letter grade. So, you know, if you have a B in the course, you can get a B plus instead from doing this museum session with me. You can also do it, the information is on Canvas, as I have mentioned, and you can do it individually as well, but you have to do a written assignment in order to prove to me that you actually, you know, went to the museum. But if you go to this with me, it's just you and me having a discussion. So if you're planning on going to this, please let me know in the chat right now so I can get a account. Oh, okay, lots of folks. All right, so I'm gonna write everyone's names down. So Francis, Alpha. And if you don't tell me right now that you're gonna go, like you're still on the fence, you can still show up. Um, and it's not like you have to tell me right now, but I just need to kind of know what to expect. Elsa, Kyle, Cameron, Tyler. Okay, we're gonna have lots of folks. Cameron, Tyler, Hunter. Yes. So if you're doing the individual version of this, it is due by the same time as the final, which is Friday at 11:59 p.m. next week. 15. And Jean. Great. Good. So I will send out an email to everyone, the whole class. If you've never been to the Spencer Museum of Art before, I'm sure a lot of you probably have, but you might not have been, or you've at least probably seen it. It's right behind the Union, but like down, you know how the Union's kind of like built into the hill. It's behind the Union down the hill. So I'll send everyone like directions and like stuff like that. Good. Are there any more questions about the extra credit? Okay, Kate as well. There's a lot of folks. Okay, sounds good. So today we're going to get a really brief history of K-pop. Um, you know, we can't go into all the deep details, but if you want to learn more about the history of K-pop, particularly from like the early 20th century, like the Japanese colonial period until now, you can take my other course, which is K-pop in the arts. But we're just going to go over kind of the modern, kind of more contemporary K-pop, and then we'll talk about intertextuality. So what do you think about K-pop? What are some things that come to mind when someone mentions K-pop? What do you imagine when you hear the term? What do you think about? What's your overall impression? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you not care? Um, you know, there could be a lot of different things, and you are welcome to not care for it as well. Let's see. All right. So Alpha says flashy, very flashy. Yes, right. And we're going to be focusing on that a little bit, right? It's very visual. It's a very visually driven kind of thing, I guess is what we'll call it for now. Callie says dancing. Absolutely. That goes along with the visual aspect. The dancing part, you know, is part of that image of K-pop. Truman says BTS. Absolutely. BTS. That's who we're going to talk about today. When I got into K-pop, this was in like 2010. BTS didn't exist yet, but BTS is now like the big K-pop, you know, kind of group. Really, the only one that people really know, if they're not into K-pop. Claire, compelling music videos. Yes, the music videos are very important to K-pop. Very much so. Travis is a toxic culture. Yeah, we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about some of the bad aspects of K-pop as well, the industry particularly. We're going to think about it as an industry, not just as an art form, right? And Ian kind of reflects that as well. Ultra capitalistic. Yeah, very much so. So Kyle knows nothing about K-pop or no idea what it is. That is totally fine. You are going to learn a lot today. Um, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of explain some of the basics at least, right? Very consuming, Francis says. Yes, there is this kind of stereotype about people who like K-pop, right? K-pop fans, that it's like they're obsessed with it. It's all they think about, all they talk about. Here and there. I was like that a little bit when I was in high school over 10 years ago now, but I'm not really like that anymore. I think definitely a lot of younger, especially children, or adolescents, they definitely kind of have that image, right? Yes, very good, Gus. Yeah, the Western fan base is very enthusiastic. Yeah, especially people who are not Korean, um, who like K-pop. It's a huge part of their kind of world, right? Which kind of goes along with that image of like obsessive fans. Um, let's see. Yes, Hope says even K-pop now you will hear like BTS songs on the radio in North America, right? Jimin, boy slash girl groups, the aesthetic, the unhealthy. Yes, the gender division is very integral to the visuals and the way that the industry works, right? Boys and girls are they're kind of that gender binary is foundational to how it works, right? Group performance. Yes, exactly, Hunter. And kind of unfamiliar, not so much to if you grew up during Y2K and maybe like the early 2000, well, I mean that's Y2K. The idea of having a group, an idol group in North America or Europe, it was really big then. Nowadays, not so much. I mean, in the 2010s, we had like One Direction, but they were not anything like what K-pop groups are like or the Y2K idol groups were. They were very different. Yes, dance, flashy, crazy music videos. Yeah, sometimes the music videos are just overwhelming, right? The visuals of K-pop are like really a lot, which I think is something that deters people from it. Maricela, yes, fashion. Fashion is huge in K-pop. Again, the visual aspect, but the clothes they're wearing, even in this image, you can tell they were very particular about what kind of clothing everyone in the group is supposed to be wearing. There's a concept behind it, right? Um, yes, dance performance videos. So as Daphne points out, like dance is so integral to K-pop that a lot of K-pop songs that have music videos also have specific dance performance videos where you're just watching them do the dance. And that's kind of how people are able to learn the dances. Yes, exact. Yes, Tyler. So, again, some of the negative aspects of it. There are a lot of unhealthy aspects like the hard working hours. A lot of K-pop idols develop, well, not a lot, but enough K-pop idols develop eating disorders, and other mental health issues and physical health issues. Let's see what else. I think we're kind of getting a lot of the same stuff here. Yeah, so the music is upbeat, Fatima says. I would agree. There's a lot of upbeat K-pop songs, and I think people kind of associate that with K-pop music. Um, let's see. Disciplined. Oh, Miranda says disciplined. Yes. So there's kind of this idea that K-pop idols have to follow this very strict regiment, right? Which is set for them by the companies, which is mostly true, for sure. Almost every aspect of their life is controlled by their company, as long as they're under contract. And then even after contract, they have to deal with it all the time. Let's see. Yeah, so like in North America and Europe, as Ryan points out, particularly, a lot of younger female fans who, especially if they're fans of K-pop or BTS, kind of the stigma against them gets compiled with misogyny. So like this kind of femphobia, anti-femininity towards these women or these, I mean, particularly young girls who are really into it. And then that gets kind of compounded with racism against Asian people, right? Because especially in North American and European culture or society, Asian people are usually racistly categorized as like non-desirable, right? And so this idea of being obsessed with someone as an aesthetic or sexual or romantic kind of object who's Asian is kind of strange in or considered strange in North America and Europe, right? You know, obviously that's not it's not true at all. It's a just a completely it's a racist convention. Let's see. Okay, yes, very good. So Ian brings up something. K-pop sometimes overshadows other aspects of Korean culture. Yes, absolutely. So K-pop, it's important we just start with this now. K-pop is not, and I think everyone in this course gets it since we're in week 7 of it. You know, K-pop is not the only thing to Korea. It actually is very much its own little like section of Korea that it really doesn't affect like Korean people who live in Korea very much on the daily. I mean, yes, it's always there, but it's not something that has a huge kind of control over their lives. Um, I'm sure some of us can probably name all of the groups that are on this page right now. Um, but you know, most Korean people probably won't be able to do that. Unless, you know, they happen to really be into K-pop in the way that like non-Korean people are into K-pop. So that's very important to point out. Okay, so what is K-pop then? What do you think? What is it? How would you define K-pop? We have some aspects of K-pop here, or some things you think of, but then how would you define it? It's kind of two different ways to go about it. Okay, so yes, very simply, Korean pop music, okay? We'll talk about that in a moment, but yeah, keep that idea in mind. Hunter, entertainment industry. I like this a little bit. It's a little bit better. Not necessarily better, but I think more specific. Yeah, the way the entertainment industry works, right, in Korea. It's a genre of music, yes, or a cultural movement. I like that. Yes, maybe one of those two. Elsa says a style of production. Very good. I can tell you read O's chapter, right? So O kind of gives us a couple of different definitions of it. Let's see. So yeah, if it's a genre, it's what is it what defines the genre? So we have a little bit of everything, Callie says, right? I would say that's true. So there's a lot of upbeat music, club dance, energetic music. Um, let's see. Yes, and then the flashy visuals, very important here. Yeah. And so it's very ocular, what might be called ocular centric. So yeah, so the music, we can kind of think about the music. So not one kind of gender, or gender, excuse me. I mean, not one kind of gender, one kind of genre of music. There's all sorts of genres mixed up in it. If you're someone who likes K-indie, which is technically kind of a part of K-pop, although some people disagree with that, even that is kind of coming into more mainstream, right? Yeah, basically any genre, like we've been saying here. I'll talk a little bit more specifically about where it comes from in a moment, but yeah, just think about that. Genre fluid is a term you will hear when talking about K-pop music. Language mixing, right? So it's not just Korean language. There's English mixed in it. A lot of groups have Japanese, Chinese, Spanish even. There's a lot of language mixing in it. So it can't really be defined by its language either. It's not just Korean in that sense either. But it is very visual or ocular centric, which ocular just refers to eye, right? So fashion and styling are very important to K-pop and keeping up an image for the idols. And then dance is extremely important for K-pop visuals, right? It's all about the dancing. That's what I think a lot of people fall in love with. But I think one of the problems are with defining and what a lot of people, what a lot of scholars say, I don't think O specifically talks about this, but there are other scholars who talk about this, is just saying it's Korean popular music isn't quite correct because what is popular in South Korea and what is popular outside of South Korea, like I was just talking about a little bit, they can be very different sometimes. So some K-pop groups specifically cater to a global or outside of Korea audience, while as others actually target more Korean audiences. You actually see a lot of idols who are popular in South Korea are actually solo artists, not just the groups, but there's a lot more solo artists who are popular in Korea rather than versus outside of Korea, which is mostly the groups. And then we have that industry aspect, which is what O was talking about a lot, right? So that mode of production, a style of production is what is often used. So it's this mode in which there's the companies, the entertainment companies that own, or they don't own them, sorry, that contract these idols. They do all the training for them in-house. They do all the production in-house. So the recording, the distribution, everything is done by this company. And then their idol management. So making sure the idols have a particular schedule, getting them onto broadcasted TV shows and on the radio. All of that is also handled by, all of it is handled by the same company, which is a little bit different from what happens in North America and Europe. Especially the production and then the managing, those two things are usually separate companies or managed by separate kinds of companies at least. And then here's a term that O brings up, but doesn't really quite get to what this means. Neoliberalism. What do you think this kind of means? I give some ideas here. It's kind of this concept of freer market equals a freer individual. And this idea of achieving your dreams despite hardship, like you'll do anything to achieve your dreams, regardless, right? Has anyone heard this term before? What do you think it means? Yeah, so Tyler brings up, so this term is originally kind of a more of a political science term. Well, it's actually a philosophy. It originates in philosophy from this dude named Foucault, um, and which you don't need to know all that. But it's very much used in political science, sociology. Yeah, it's kind of like what Tyler says here. This very heavy or very concentrated individualism, right? So it's neo because liberalism, especially in Europe and settler colonial European North America, was really just originally associated with the more free you, the more you were able to engage in institutions like the government, the more free you were, or the more property you're allowed to own as an individual, the more free you were. But that's not exactly what is going on here. Now it's simply the more choice that you have, or the more unregulated kind of unregulated markets will bring more opportunities to individuals. That's kind of the idea here. So how does that relate to K-pop? What does O discuss? How does that relate to K-pop? Yeah, okay. So idols have this attitude of working hard, right? To become the most famous or talented, right? They want to be more than just normal. Very good, Tyler. What else? Yeah, Claire. So idols are willing to exploit themselves, right? And these companies are allowed to do it, right? These industries are allowed to control or exploit these individuals. And these individuals, very interestingly, seem to be willing to allow that to happen. They're kind of quote unquote okay with it. We're going to challenge that notion a little bit. That's what O brings up. That's what O says, right? But we're going to challenge that in just a little bit. Right. So the industry is allowed to just take control over these individuals, right? Let's see what else. Yeah, right, exactly, Cameron. So commodification, neoliberalism is very much associated with the commodification of self. That's another phrase you'll hear, right? So the self becomes the commodity. So this is different because really liberalism itself was about your ability to own or take part in um, buying and selling commodities, right? You yourself were not a commodity, but you were able to own and trade commodities. That was what it meant to be free. But now being free has this sense of you are a commodity in a lot of ways, and you function a lot like a commodity, right? Yes, exactly. Good. So does this make sense a little bit more? Exactly, Francis. Very simply put, K-pop feels like utilizing idols as a product. They are. They're human beings, but they act like a product that a company produces, right? And that's part of, and that is viewed or understood as part of their freedom, right? They're free to achieve their dream because of that. So, how did we get here, though? So let's talk about this music revolution that happens in the 90s. So no one really talks about this in the resources this week, but as you can imagine, this all really starts to come to the fore after Minjung, right? So Minjung led to democratization, which means that there became a lot less control over what was censored and allowed to be imported into Korea. The music industry prior to the 90s was very heavily controlled by the dictatorial governments, right? Because obviously music expresses a lot of ideas. They don't want all sorts of kinds of ideas to come in for people to engage with. So over the course of the 90s, it's not immediate after Minjung, but over the course of the 90s, you see both of these restrictions on censorship and imports of music to really lessen. And at the same time, during the 80s, there was an influx, and throughout the 90s, it continued, of North American and European music trends and technology. So that's when we get something called dance pop. Has anyone ever heard of this kind of music before? There is one particular all-time artist who is from the United States, who people say is the greatest celebrity of all time, or really the only one who ever achieved true celebrity. Does anyone know who I might be talking about? Michael Jackson. Yes, Ian. Thank you. Yes, Michael Jackson. Um, so Michael Jackson is kind of this kind of music that Michael Jackson was creating in the late 80s and then the early 90s, right? It's that kind of genre of music that starts coming into Korea. How? What do you think? How is that coming into Korea? Even despite censorship and imports, what do you think? Ding, 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 ding. Yes, US military bases. US military bases. So these US military bases, I don't have this on this slide. You don't need to remember this, but it's just for your edification. US military bases, there used to be as well these clubs, and there really still are clubs and bars that are dedicated to foreigners. And of course, they would play North American and whatever kind of music was popular in North America and Europe at the time. Well, Korean people, of course, started attending into these bars and these clubs, right? Because they thought it seemed cool. And that's how this kind of music became kind of more common among just regular Korean people, people who were trying to be musicians, trying to become music producers, right? They started becoming familiar with this. And then synthesizers. So coming with dance pop, the genre is this technology a synthesizer? What's a synthesizer? Does anyone kind of know what that is, or can think they can kind of explain it in really simple terms? Yes, Claire, it can make crazy noises for sure. Yeah. So the synthesizer is kind of like a keyboard, but it has like a built-in software and you can change the sound. You can make crazy noises, right? But you can also usually, especially in the 80s, they started coming out with these ones that you could record directly onto the synthesizer. So you don't need to write things down. You can just record. And then you can sometimes, in the 80s, it was starting to develop that you could connect it to a computer and a software on a computer, it could download that audio file, right? And then you can mix the audio files together on the computer. So it made it a lot easier to start recording music, actually, because you didn't need to have musicians necessarily in a studio. Now, a lot of the times today, of course, you still need a singer in the studio and whatnot. But so far as like the backup goes, the music itself could be more easily recorded. And that means it was a lot easier to distribute as well. So within all this going on, we have one really big group that comes to the fore in the early 90s, and they really changed the game, and they were responding to a lot of these changes, and they were actually at the forefront of bringing these changes about as well. And their name is Sateji and Kids. You might also see Sateji and the Boys or Sateji and the Kids. Um, but let's watch. I'm going to send you this. Let's watch one of their most famous music performances here. And I want you to think about what is kind of visually striking about it. How would you describe what's kind of going on visually? How much time do we have? Maybe we'll watch like the first minute and a half or so. I'm going to turn the music down. But I sent you the link in the chat so you can watch it on yours. I'm going to just play it here for me to look at, and so I can kind of gauge how much time we've spent. We'll just watch like the first minute and a half. I've heard this song a million times, so I know how it goes. Okay, that was a minute, but I think that's enough. I see a lot of answers coming in here. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. All right. So what would you say about the visuals? Thinking about the visuals and the music. You can comment on the music as well. That's fine. So visuals are fashion, dance, styling, the way the stage is set up and everything is kind of working together as a stage, right? Francis says sensory overload. Yes. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on for sure. Good. Yeah. So Cameron brings up American rap and hip hop. Yeah, there's kind of like a lot. The music itself is very much kind of rap, hip hop, this kind of dance pop, we usually say, which kind of mixes all of these things together, right? Uh, very good. So Tyler says the dance is very synchronized, very much so. It's very choreographed, very much so, which is highly planned. So choreography means dance is a dance that's been planned. So choreography is just movements planned in time, is what choreography is really. Yes, it's very casual kind of clothing, kind of like what's the word I want to use here? Yeah, if it, like kind of hip hop's kind of wanting to be hip hop style is really what I'll say. You know, it's not necessarily exactly, what a lot of hip hop artists in the 90s were wearing, but it kind of wants to look like that, right? And that's in the hats, the sunglasses. What else? Let's see. Yeah, so the camera, very good. The camera is very focused on them. It's very much moving around, trying to make sure that we can see them as much as possible. That's its goal, right? Let's see. Lots of lights. I don't know why they did that for this. I mean, that's not necessarily very normal, or very typical, but yeah, there's a lot of lighting. I guess it gives kind of this like bright energy to the performance, maybe. Yes, it's very fast paced. Exactly. It's very fast paced. Yeah, so you can kind of see this is the time. This is from 93, I believe. So you can kind of see we getting into this kind of hip hop, dance pop type of music is starting to come in, inspired by a lot of this, the kind of music you would hear really in North America and Europe in the 90s, right? So, while this is going on, another thing happens in the late 90s, and this is called the International Monetary Fund Crisis, or IMF crisis. And this particularly started in 97, lasted for about 3 years until the 2000s. So this is when all these new nation states, or these kind of nation states that underwent heavy industrialization after World War II, so Korea, who were aligned with the United States, they defaulted on their loans, basically, from the United States, on their US backing for their currency, particularly. And so their currency dropped like crazy. So, you think about today, about 1,001 is worth approximately $1. I think it's worth a little bit less than $1, or yeah, a little bit less than $1. But it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So imagine if 1001 then all of a sudden became worth 5 cents, basically, right? So you're not going to be able to buy as much stuff with 1001 as you would be with $1, right? So that's kind of why this was such a big deal, right? And it wasn't just in Korea. It actually started in Thailand and then it kind of rippled. Like it happened in Japan, Korea, Philippines, like all of these places. And so because of that, a lot of companies had to lay off, especially the banks. They had to lay off their workers. And so you can see in this figure, or in this image here, this is kind of a famous picture of these protesters. They're from the Seoul Bank, and the Seoul Bank labor union, and IMF equals I'm fired, right? So they've all been let go, and so they're protesting against this, right? So basically, this brought about this kind of shift in what a dream job was, or what you should be working, what kind of career you should be working towards a little bit in South Korea. And so Chaebar, so if you remember, Chaebar are those like big conglomerate companies, right? We talked about them with Minjung. So like Samsung, LG. People kind of start to distrust them a little bit. They're not necessarily yes, you might want to, but they're not as secure as people think they are, believe them to be. So this kind of shift is happening while the entertainment industry, as we've been talking about, is starting to become much bigger, starting to expand. It's really starting to change. And so this means that it leads to this entertainment idea of becoming an idol or working in the entertainment industry, much less of a risky, quote unquote, risky business, or it's worth trying to pursue it, right? You could get a lot out of it. So that's how we get to Hallyu in the 2000s, really started in the late 90s. But Hallyu means the Korean wave. And so it can mean a couple of different things, but it basically just refers to the expansion of Korean entertainment industries in the 2000s, particularly outside of South Korea. So nowadays, Hallyu can also refer to like anything K-culture. So in the 2000s, it was really just K-pop and K-dramas. So K-dramas are the Korean like television dramas. And those started to really become popular outside of South Korea. And it was partially happenstance, but partially because companies that were producing them were targeting other Asian countries, particularly. So not North America and Europe, but Asian countries, especially Japan and China, but also Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines. The idea of having Korean entertainment or some form of entertainment coming out of Korea, it started to become more commonplace in Asia during this time. So if you see here, this is one of the most famous K-dramas that was kind of a centerpiece of Hallyu, or the Korean wave in the 2000s. Does anyone know what language is this in? Because it's not Korean. It's called Winter Sonata in English. But yeah, this is actually Japanese. This was huge in Japan. It was so big among it's kind of stereotypical, like it was so big among middle-aged Japanese women in the early 2000s. Yeah. So it was popular in Korea too, but really popular in Japan. And this actor, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was seen, I think he was like voted like the most desirable man, like in Japan or something like among Japanese women at some point or something. But we also see K-pop has these idols, big idols that are kind of across countries too, and doing things not just in Korean. So Rain, his name is Beat in Korean. He was a solo artist, solo idol, and Poa. Both of them had big careers in Japan. Both of them actually have full English albums. I think Rain has a full English album. I know Poa does. But yeah, so we see this start to really change in the 2000s and starts to look a little bit more like the global phenomenon that we think of today. So becoming a K-pop idol. So we've kind of figured this out here, or we've already talked about this. So you're scouted by a company. So O is pretty adamant that these companies kind of go out in the street, right? And just pick up people who they think are pretty faces. Uh, so this is from 10 years ago. That's really not what happens. I don't think that ever really was the case of something that happened, but to a lot of people, that's what felt like happened. Um, these companies like you'll hear about SM Entertainment, JYP Entertainment, YG Entertainment. These entertainment companies, they would hold auditions for dancers, singers, rappers, and stuff like that. And they preferred preteen children. So O never really clarifies that in her chapter, right? But these were not adults. They were not 18 or 19 years old is the legal age in Korea. They were preteens, really between 10 and like 12, sometimes earlier. Um, yeah, so maybe, sometimes they might be approached on the street, but it's not as common as a lot of like, oh, kind of seems to make it out to be, or as a lot of people think. Most people come through auditions. And then they train for years before they debut, right? Um, oh, Ryan, yeah, this is a good way to think about it. They're kind of maybe on the street, they're invited to audition. That's a good way to put it, Ryan. They're not just like given a contract right there, right? They're invited, like, oh, we're gonna have these auditions. You have the perfect face. Like, we would love for you to come, right? That I think is a better way of putting it, right? So I guess they kind of are scouted off the street, but they still have to like audition and stuff. And then once you're accepted and you're under a contract, the company is going to train you. They're going to teach you and they're going to help you hone your talents in singing, dancing, rapping, languages. You'll get your education paid for through the company, everything like that. But that comes at a cost, right? So this company kind of starts to control your life. Like you have to follow their schedule. You have to live with these people who they might be putting you with as an idol group. You don't get much control over kind of what happens or what you're allowed to do, right? They can restrict your diet, they can restrict your exercise, or they can make you exercise more, things like this. You kind of lose bodily autonomy doing this as well. And you do all this, and no debut is ever guaranteed. That is still pretty true, I think, to this day. So a debut is when the idol group first comes onto the scene. They kind of release their first music video and first song. Some idol groups, or I can't remember what the statistic is. I think O gives a statistic. But the majority of them actually never debut. Um, so it's very precarious still. And so this is how O kind of describes it. She says the tough training process is not intensive labor, but a prerequisite for trainees to pursue their dreams. Idle wannabes therefore voluntarily participate in forced overwork. This is on 109. So let's think about this a little bit. So this is an idol from my favorite group when she first debuted. So her name is Minji, and she's from the group 2NE1. They disbanded and stuff. It's a whole thing, but they debuted in 2009, but they contracted all the idols contracted. There's four of them in 2005. Minji was born in 1994. How old was Minji when she was contracted with this company? I know it sounds stupid. I'm asking you this, but I'm trying to put it in perspective here. What's kind of going on? 11. She was 11 years old when she signed a contract with an entertainment company and underwent this training process, started going this training process. And luckily she debuted. Yes, 2NE1 was my first favorite group too. So my question to you is, if K-pop trainees are 11 years old, even younger, children, can they voluntarily do anything? In Korea or in the US, it's actually the same in both of them. No, they cannot. Children cannot do that, right? And a lot of people who were child idols in both North America, right now, and in Korea are coming forward about this a lot more in their experiences as, basically these in child property of these entertainment industries, right? So I think this is a huge oversight, and this is very misleading how O discusses this chapter. I'm going to actually update this chapter for next semester, but we need to kind of put that in perspective. These are children. Yes, they're training and they are achieving their dream, but they cannot do anything voluntarily, right? And yes, Hope, exactly. Sometimes it's the parents, right? Sometimes it is, not always. But sometimes the parents are doing it because they're surviving off of the money that their kid is making, right? Exactly. So in Korea, though, idols actually don't make very much money. I'm not sure about parents in the case of training. I'm assuming they get an okay sum of money from the companies. But idols mostly make money not from the companies directly, but through doing like side work, like advertising, and kind of like special appearances on shows and stuff like that. That's where they make most of their money. Yes, they do, Alpha. They have very similar child labor laws as we do in the US. I don't know what the minimum age is to get a job, but I believe it's either 14 or 15. But this, for some reason, entertainment industry, right, gets kind of left out of that, right? Yeah, exactly. So really want to put this in perspective, what's kind of going on with this industry. And this is the negative part, but it is the part we need to take into consideration, right? And it's not, we shouldn't really call it voluntarily. They're not voluntarily doing anything. Okay, okay, let's really quickly go through this here. So K-pop starts to really expand into like North America and Europe, and that's catalyzed by this huge platform becomes more mainstream on the internet. It existed since the early 2000s. And that is YouTube. Yes, YouTube. I'm sure almost all of us have gone on YouTube today, probably. I use YouTube so much, way too much. So what this allowed these companies to do with these idol groups is they could release music videos and records together, right? So on the same day, you can have this song come out with a music video and the album, fans can buy the album at the same time. So it's this kind of huge event, right? You have this huge debut or premiere event. It also allowed live streamings and more interaction with the fans, right? So now your fans can watch the idol groups, and the idol groups can be a little bit more candid, quote unquote, or more quote unquote real with the fans, because they have really easy access to communicating with them. And fans can respond to K-pop content. So one of the big things are the fan dance covers or music covers, right? So this is a group based in Kansas City. I don't really watch them or anything, but you can go look at their stuff if you want to. But there are fan cover groups all over the world, in every country and probably in every city now, who cover these K-pop dances to the songs and then put them on YouTube, right? And so it creates more K-pop content and more content related to the idol group. So you can see it's kind of like free content, really free advertising in some way for these companies and idol groups. TikTok now, yes, exactly. It's just like that, Callie. Actually, it's kind of like the dance trends on TikTok is these kind of dance covers. This wasn't just K-pop that had this. A lot of pop music all over the world had these kind of dance covers, right? Beyonce covers, stuff like that. But along with that, you have like reaction videos to K-pop content and vlogs. So people who are secondary commentators on K-pop. I love people who do reaction videos. I love hearing people's commentary. I have no clue why, but I watch it all the time. What other people think about something. I don't know why it's interesting to me, but I love it on YouTube, and a lot of people do. And again, it just expands the amount of K-pop content that there is. And nowadays, K-pop is a pretty normal kind of aspect of the global or international music industry, right? So in the early 2010s, Psy's Gangnam Style became huge. It became the first YouTube video, right, to 1 billion views, I think. And now that's like, pretty commonplace for some K-pop videos. Like BTS Dynamite has over 1 billion views. And this was number one. BTS and Psy. I don't know if Gangnam Style was ever number one, but Dynamite was number one in the US, even in the US for a while when it came out. So, it's pretty normal now. Okay, so intertextuality. What is intertextuality? What would you say, really briefly, if there's just kind of like one really simple way you could summarize what intertextuality is, what would it be? What are some things you would say? Very simple things. Boom, boom, yes. We have the word I'm looking for, or the word I think of at least. References. References, right? Colloquially, we would just say references, right? Oh, it's referring to this, or like it's, this is actually referring back to this thing, right? And so intertextuality is the study of referencing. It's really the study of it. Um, and so there are a couple of assumptions. So the assumption in according to intertextuality, the study of references, is that all media, so we mean that in the broadest possible sense, whether it's TV, whether it's a book, whether it's a painting, whether it's a performance piece or something, it's related to other media in some way. So that's the assumption. There are probably some references or something that's inspiring this media, right? That already existed before. And so what intertextuality tries to do is identify those relationships in order to help us understand that media better. And one thing that we can do is look at visual and musical elements to try and understand those references, those intertextual relationships. And so you can kind of think of intertextuality as a hyperlink. And every media is a lot like a wiki page or a Wikipedia. I mean, I know that's what we're mostly used to, but any kind of wiki page. It's kind of like built up of these references to other things, right? And you can kind of think about it like when you pick up on one, you can kind of click on it, and then it takes you down the rabbit hole of another media, right? So yeah, I like this idea, right? No art exists in a vacuum. Absolutely. No art exists in a vacuum. You'll hear things like originality is dead. Well, according to intertextuality, you don't have to agree with it. Originality was never just original, right? There was always something that existed prior that is inspiring this new thing, right? So when we identify intertext in music videos, we can apply what we've been doing with visual analysis, but just we have to tweak it a little bit. And we're going to focus on music videos, like I'm talking about here, and which is what Cedar Balseji does in her article. So we can use the elements of a description that we've been talking about for visual analysis. Especially we want to focus on iconography and style. So think about the characters, think about the settings, props. So props are like the inanimate objects that are placed in a scene. Like it could be in the background. The character could be interacting with it. And then symbols. Symbols are more of like the abstract kind of like signs you might see in something like that. So it could be like something that's animated on top of a music video or of a video, right? Like a little like stars or something like that they put, right? So it's kind of hard to explain, but it's just those things that they don't look like something, right? Like the way we've been talking about symbol. They don't look like the thing. And then style, we want to think about how do the colors or the color schemes especially relate to something else, their choice in font. Different fonts are associated with different genres or different kinds of art or art movements and whatnot. Fashion, what kind of fashion trends are they talking about or giving us? Shapes and lines, that again can kind of gear us towards different, cultural movements, different artistic movements, different pieces of media, right? Different media. And then we want to use our background knowledge. This is kind of the hard part, I would say, which is simply asking the question, what does this remind me of? What does it make me think of? you're probably not going to get every single reference in any piece of media. So sometimes you might need to Google things. And luckily, especially with K-pop music videos, fans have done a lot of great work compiling online references in their favorite videos and trying to pick apart music videos and what's going on in them. So usually you can just Google the music video and you'll get some ideas. But the interpretive question that we ask is, why does the music video make this reference, right? So we want to know, how does this reference connect to the music or the lyrics? Or is it being used to convey a certain image of the artists? Is it being used to target a specific audience? There's lots of different ways you can answer this question, why this specific reference, right? But you want to somehow connect it to a broader aspect of the music video itself. So not just, sometimes it is just, it's fun. But there's probably going to be some nuance to it, some reason that they're specifically referring to whatever it is that they're referring to. Okay, does that make sense? Now, why is this black? Yes, okay. And we're going to practice. We're going to do this now. All right, so let me send you, we are going to watch, I wish we could watch this whole thing. I'm not sure we can. Uh, we'll watch a good bit of it, maybe like 3 minutes of this. Yes, Ryan, what is your question? Sorry.
If I could just ask it verbally, if that's okay.
Yes, that's fine.
So just to make sure I'm understanding this right, there with intertextuality, there's still a distinction between it may be referencing another like cultural work, so like song media, etc., but that's different from, say, referencing a historical event or something.
Mm,
So like BTS has a music video, Spring Day, that references the
hmm
Seoul like ferry tragedy.
hmm
That's not necessarily intertextuality because of referencing an event, but you could say it if you were saying if it were referencing something else about it. Do I get that distinction right?
mm.
Like a historical event doesn't necessarily count as.
So I think this is a really good question, and it makes me think about how I need to teach this differently. So I think according to Cedar Seji's application, she kind of assumes that, but I do think that references to historical events are intertextual in a way, right? Because the event itself is going to have some kind of media surrounding it, right? There's images of the Sewell ferry. There's, there was so much broadcasting of
Mhm.
it. So there's going to already be some kind of visual or some kind of textual basis for understanding that historical event. So in that way, you can think about how, references themselves are kind of always based in that kind of the visual or the textual, or maybe it's the music, right? And something like that. So I do think historical events should be and can be studied through the idea of intertextuality. I mean, it's still a reference, right?
Just
Um,
depends on how you frame it then.
so it'll depend on how you frame it, right? Exactly. So when you're talking about the intertext itself, you want to think about, what is the visual cue that they use to refer to this event? What is the textual cue, or what's the, is it something in the lyrics? Is there some kind of sequence in the music that somehow relates to the to the historical event, right? So you kind of want to think about it. Intertext is about thinking through the references in that way. Does that make sense? Thinking about the visual, the music, the textual cues, and how they refer to something
Yeah,
else.
thank you.
Yes. So it can still be a historical event. Okay, so we are going to watch this. While we're watching it, take some mental notes about, who do you think are the main characters? What are the settings? What kind of like props and symbols, like kind of objects that you see making up the setting or that the characters are interacting with? What are some of the stylistic elements, like the color or the kind of genre of art or time periods or artistic movements that they might be referring to or using? and watch it with closed captions as well and see if you can get kind of an idea of what the lyrics are about. Also, we'll do 3 minutes now and we'll talk about it for 15 minutes. You can skip to like, I think it's like 10 seconds or yeah, 7 seconds. Okay, let's try and come back together. So we have lots of great things already in the chat. I'm going to take us kind of break it down one by one here. Um, so who do you think is the main character of the narrative? So there's kind of two main characters. There's kind of a musical main character, and then there's a narrative main character. Who do you think? And maybe it's kind of referenced in Seji's. So if you know their names, you can use their names, but I'll show you pictures of who they are as well. Or you can just kind of say the guy with this thing or the other, or who does this thing, right? Okay, we got a lot of different, we got a couple of different ideas about this. So the main character of the narrative, not necessarily the music, but the narrative. So I think Claire has it right here. It's okay if you didn't. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. And if you don't know their names, then you don't know. So the narrative's main character, so kind of in that opening section, and then you didn't have to watch the last section, but the last section of the music video, very much, he's the main character, is this guy. Jin is his name. After reviewing this, he actually only sings one part, or is only said to be singing one part in this song, which is in the bridge of the song. So not even a main, not even really a standout. Well, actually, it is kind of a standout part. But yeah, this guy with pink hair. So why is he the main character? Or how could you kind of come to the understanding that in the narrative of the music video, not just the music, but the narrative, that he is kind of the plot wise, he's the main character? What did the music video kind of do? Here's some pictures, and we're going to look at these a little bit closer. Yes, Claire, very good. Very good watching. Very good watching, Claire. He's the only one the camera kind of starts to zoom in on and follow, and the other guys are just kind of doing their own thing over here, right? They're kind of goofing off, is a good way to put it, right? And yeah, at some point at the beginning in this kind of part, the other characters just kind of all look at him, right? Yeah, exactly. And especially he starts looking at this painting. In the end of the music video, he interacts with this here, which we'll talk about in a minute. So yeah, so you didn't have to get that right. You can argue other ways. But insofar as the narrative is concerned, it seems to really be Gene. Okay, settings. What are the settings? Who was it earlier? I think Fatima put us on the right track. She said the video feels very Gothic/European. What feels Gothic or European about the music video? What are some of the settings? And there's more. I'm going to talk about two, but there's more than two in this music video. K-pop music videos have 10 settings. Actually, one of the ones that I've worked on really heavily has like 15 different settings. It's crazy. Okay, an art museum and Greek architecture. Very good, Claire. Ryan, yes, the historical art pieces are really helping to set this kind of atmosphere, right? Yes, and very good, Tyler. There's a table that's set and it seems to be outside. There's kind of a fancy room that's in this kind of Gothic style. It's not Gothic style, but we'll talk about what it is. So, this Greco-Roman inspired art gallery, right? With all these are actually artworks. These are real artworks that you could go see at different places. Oh, this is actually a Avalokiteshvara sculpture here, right? So it's not just Greco-Roman art, or I think it is anyways. It looks like it is. But you know, there's these kind of marble statues, right, associated. The arches, right? The arches are very much associated with that Greco-Roman style, kind of revival, and the pillars as well, right? So this is actually a museum. This is the Fine Arts Museum in Belgium, in Brussels. And it seems to be, or some people think that this set is based off of that. I don't know if it's true, but it might be. And then, yeah, we have this interior, this room that's very interior, this interior, very specific. This is actually kind of a Rococo inspired interior, which is like French, late 17th, early, and then through the 18th century Rococo style. So we have like the chandelier, we have this, there's reliefs on the ceiling frame. A relief is like a raised kind of raised part that gives a picture of something. There's the curtains, and then of course there's an artwork in the background as well, right? So you have this going on as well. So the painting, let's talk about this painting. So this is a real painting, and it is actually at the Royal Art Museum in Brussels, Belgium. It's by Bruegel, who I cannot say his name correctly because I did not study Dutch or Flemish. So what is this painting and why might it relate to Gene in the music video? So what seems to be going on in this painting? It's called The Fall of the Rebel Angels. So we're not going to do a deep visual analysis of it, but just kind of basically, as you look at it, what can you kind of determine? Okay, so chaos is happening. What else? My art history students, have you looked at this before? Yes, Claire. So the angels are falling into what is probably hell. Yeah, the angels. So if you're familiar with some kind of Christian mythology, there are certain angels who went against the Christian gods. I don't know if it's his commands or his tenets or whatever it is. And they were cast into hell, basically, or cast out of heaven, really. So yeah, so this you can kind of see, it looks like a battle, as Travis says, absolutely. You know, on top we have this kind of bright color here, and then on the bottom it's very kind of dark brownish. And so they're kind of like fighting with each other, exactly, and it's chaos. Yeah. And so why might that relate to Gene in the music video? Let's keep that question with us here. Does anyone think they might be able to make a connection? Why would you show this painting at the beginning with Gene looking at it? Why might you do this? Okay, maybe Gene feels cast out among the other idols. Maybe. Yeah, that might be something. Okay, we'll keep that with us here. Maybe it goes with the theme of the song. We're going to look at the theme of the song in just a moment. But let's look at another thing. Ooh, hope. Very good. Maybe he's supposed to be having his own personal battle, right? He's kind of feeling a sense of chaos or is feeling a sense of battle, right? So I think we kind of have to look at this final scene here, which you probably didn't watch unless you've just seen this music video like I have. What does it look like Gene ends up, this is at the end, after the, or at the end of the music video. What's he kind of interacting with here? What's he doing with it? And what do you kind of think that's going to symbolize? Thinking about the painting as well. What's kind of going on here? Ooh, caressing the face of a fallen angel. That is such a good way to describe it, Alpha. Usually people just say he's about to kiss the devil or something like that. But yeah, caressing the face of a fallen angel. Yeah. What makes you say it's supposed to be a fallen angel? What makes you say that it's a fallen angel? The black wings. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of weird, right? You don't usually see the black wings. Ooh, Claire, you're getting ahead, getting ahead of me. Yes, they do mention that in the song. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe so thinking about this, so what could this kind of symbolize? What is him kind of caressing it? He does actually end up going in and kissing it. He does kiss it at the end. What could that kind of action of kind of kissing this fallen angel, what could that kind of indicate about Gene? Yeah, something kind of, it sounds a little bit cliche, but accepting his inner demons. Oh, very good, Fatima. Yeah, they're kind of like, they have a similar color scheme going on here with Jean's white shirt and black pants. Yeah, Ryan, accepting himself slash his fall, right? Maybe the negative aspects of himself, something like that. So the lyrics, let's look at the lyrics. What do you think this song lyrically is about? So in English, my blood, sweat, tears, and my last dance, take it all away. My blood, sweat, tears, and my cold breath, take it all away. My blood, sweat, tears. I know well, they're all yours. This isn't a verse. This is a spell that will punish me. Peaches and cream, sweeter than sweet, chocolate cheeks and chocolate wings. But your wings are the devil's. There's a bitter next to your sweet. Kiss me. It's okay if it hurts. Just make it as tight. I don't know what this, I just copied this. I don't know what it's supposed to be. As that I can't feel the pain anymore. Baby, it's okay if I get drunk. I'll drink you in deep now, deep into my throat, the whiskey that is you. This is just the first verse. So what do you think it's kind of being about, being in love with, or being in love with, what do you think it's about? Yeah, falling in love with someone who's maybe bad for you. Yeah, exactly. Like you're really in love with someone, or Daphne, it's a forbidden kind of love, right? Or yeah, Ian struggling with desire. Maybe Callie, yeah, maybe it's kind of a toxic relationship and you're kind of giving into it, just kind of accepting it as even though it's bad for you. Yeah, I think any of these things could be interpreted from this, right? So according to the article, she doesn't explicitly state this, but in her little chart, she talks about this, Professor Seiji. What is this whole thing actually a reference to? It is actually a particular text that this is supposed to be a reference to. Ryan, you seem to know a lot. Do you know what this text is? So this is a novel called Demian, The Story of Boyhood from 1919 by Hermann Hesse. It's a German psychological novel about this boy who grows up. And in the music video, which we didn't quite get to, one of the people in the group named RM, he actually reads a line from that novel in the music video. When they kind of cut the music, he reads a line from it. And so apparently in it, I haven't read it, but the theme of good versus evil comes up a lot, and it's all about this boy becoming, trying to kind of navigate that. Apparently in the book, he chooses, at one point, he ends up choosing something that's evil. I don't know what it's supposed to be. If you've read it, let me know. Over what is good, which is kind of like what Gene is doing, kind of kissing the fallen angel, right? He's kind of choosing this temptation or evil over what is good. And we kind of see that in the lyrics too, right? They're like, I know you're bad, but I'm going to choose you anyways, right? So going back to the idea of using your background knowledge, I had no idea about any of this, right? So this is something that I only know because of Professor Seji, something you probably only knew because of what she wrote, and she probably only knew it because of what fans had written as well. I would assume, because fans will write online and blog about this a lot. So then why the classical European settings, like the kind of Greco-Roman museum and there's all sorts of art, famous artworks that are referenced, the Rococo style thing. What might be the reason for that? Okay, so scholarly, it kind of gives a certain image of maybe a certain kind of image of the group. What kind of image? What do you think? There's no right or wrong answer to this, by the way. It's really up to your interpretation. Okay, so maybe an image of like they're educated, they're kind of a smart, well-read, right? Kind of associating the BTS with like what is perceived as like high art a little bit, right? What else? Yeah, high art. There, this is a good way to put it, Daphne. Associated with fine art, like they're high quality too, right? Something like that. That might be something. Um, Yeah, and so, yeah, Ian, this is a good point too. Good and evil is like a really common theme in a lot of European artistic and textual traditions. It's a little bit there in like East Asian ones, but not as pronounced. And that might have some religious reasons for that, right? But yeah, so maybe that's why. What are some other reasons? What about audience? What about audience? Why might you want to do this for your audience or for an audience? What do you think? This is what Seji really focuses on, is the audience. Ooh, Fatima, very interesting. It's kind of like Inception. They're art, and they're viewing art, and we're viewing them as art. So it makes it more interesting, yeah. So they're kind of like trying to maybe reach a global audience, right? So these are like references that maybe a lot of people could recognize at least one of these artworks, right? Or this kind of architecture, right? And so it helps them kind of engage or with the audience or grab the audience's attention, especially a global audience. So people, not just people who are Korean, but people from all over the world. All right. So let's talk about your plenary response. This is a little bit different. I'm sorry. If you want to go, you can go. The plenary response, it's all on Canvas. It explains it. But if you want to listen, I'll explain it to you. So you're going to choose a K-pop music video that is not BTS's Blood, Sweat, and Tears and analyze its intertextuality. You can pick one that Seji discusses in her article, or I have uploaded and it's under the module, the weekly module, and it's on the plenary response submission portal. It's top popular K-pop music videos, and it has links to like the top 10, I think, K-pop music videos by views on YouTube. So you could pick one of those, or you could just pick whatever you want. So you need to introduce the basics of the music video, so the group, the title, and the year, and then you need to pick 2 instances of visual intertext or references in the music video and describe and explain them. So be sure to include timestamps as well of where they occur in the music video. And then to interpret this intertext, you need to answer, why do you think these references were included in the music video? So it could be, it's up to you really. It could be have to do with the narrative, the music, the lyrics, the intended audience, or maybe the idol group has its own myth around itself and it has something to do with that. All right, so that's what you're doing. So if you have any questions, you can stay back and ask me. Um, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. You can always, well, it's the last one anyways. Thank you all so much for these lovely plenary sessions. This has been great. I think everyone has been very interactive. Let me stop this.